One might have hoped that the acquisition of a major communications platform by the world's most conspicuous narcissist would have taught us something about the fragility of our public discourse, but apparently the lesson requires still further repetition. When Elon Musk descended upon Twitter with all the grace of a rhinoceros in a china shop, armed with $44 billion and the emotional maturity of a petulant teenager, he managed to transform what was already a fairly squalid digital bazaar into something altogether more sinister, a vanity project masquerading as a crusade for free speech. The grotesque spectacle began, as these things so often do, with the proclamation of noble intentions. Here was Musk, fresh from his triumphs in electric vehicles and rocket ships, ready to liberate the digital commons from the supposed tyranny of content moderation. One recalls similar declarations from history's great liberators, though most of them at least had the decency to believe their own propaganda. With Musk, one gets the distinct impression that the only thing he truly believes in is his own reflection in the screen of his phone at 2 in the morning, crafting yet another puerile joke about bodily functions to share with his legion of sycophants. Let us be clear about what Twitter was before this hostile takeover by a man-child with a god complex. It was hardly paradise. The platform had long served as a breeding ground for the worst impulses of our species: mob justice, viral stupidity, and the kind of performative outrage that makes the Salem witch trials look like a model of measured deliberation. But it also functioned, however imperfectly, as something approaching a global town square, a place where journalists could break news, dissidents could organize, and ordinary citizens could hold the powerful to account. That all of this occurred alongside an endless stream of banality and bile was perhaps the price of admission to the democratic experiment in its digital form. Enter Musk, stage right, with all the subtlety of a colonoscopy. His first act upon taking possession of his new toy was to fire half the workforce, including, and this detail requires particular emphasis, most of those responsible for keeping the platform from descending into complete chaos. Content moderators, engineers who understood the delicate architecture of the system, people who actually knew how to prevent the site from becoming a cesspool of hatred and disinformation, all shown the door with the kind of callous disregard one might expect from a Dickensian factory owner, though at least those villains didn't pretend they were doing it for the sake of civilization. The comparison to a spoiled child is not merely rhetorical flourish. Watch Musk's behavior on his own platform, and you witness something genuinely pathetic. A man worth hundreds of billions of dollars engaging in Twitter spats with random critics, sharing conspiracy theories that would embarrass a drunk uncle at Thanksgiving, and banning journalists who dare to report on his various hypocrisies, while simultaneously claiming to be a free speech absolutist. The absolutism, it seems, extends only as far as speech that flatters his ego or advances his interests. But the real crime here, and crime is not too strong a word, is what this has done to the very concept of public discourse. Under Musk's stewardship, Twitter has become a carnival of the grotesque, where previously banned extremists mingle freely with bot armies, where verification badges are sold like papal indulgences, and where the algorithm seems specifically designed to amplify the most toxic voices while suppressing anything resembling thoughtful dialogue. The platform that once helped coordinate the Arab Spring now serves primarily as a megaphone for fascists, cranks, and the kind of people who think the earth is flat and vaccines contain microchips. Consider the laughable Twitter Files episode, Musk's attempt to cast himself as the hero in a thriller nobody asked for. Here was our billionaire savior, breathlessly revealing that a social media company had, brace yourselves, moderated content and consulted with government officials about potential foreign interference. The horror, the scandal. Next, he'll be revealing that water is wet and politicians occasionally lie. But this performative transparency served its purpose. It distracted from the fact that under his ownership, Twitter has become far more opaque, far more arbitrary in its enforcement of rules, and far more susceptible to manipulation by bad actors with deep pockets. The destruction of verification as a meaningful concept deserves special mention in this catalogue of failures. What was once a simple blue checkmark indicating that a public figure was who they claim to be has been transformed into a pay-to-play scheme that would embarrass even a medieval pope. Now any fool with $8 a month can purchase the appearance of credibility, leading to a situation where parody accounts are indistinguishable from real ones, where misinformation spreads with the velocity of light, and where the very notion of authoritative sourcing has been rendered meaningless. It's as if someone looked at the problem of fake news and decided the solution was to make all news equally suspect. Meanwhile, actual journalists, the people who do the tedious work of verification, fact-checking, and speaking truth to power, have been systematically marginalized on the platform. Many have been banned outright for the crime of reporting on Musk's business dealings or personal behavior. Others have simply given up, fleeing to other platforms or abandoning social media altogether. The result is a public square that increasingly resembles less the Athenian agora and more the comments section of a particularly unhinged YouTube video. The international implications of this degradation cannot be overstated. Twitter, for all its flaws, had become an essential tool for activists in authoritarian regimes, for citizens documenting war crimes, for researchers tracking disease outbreaks, and for countless others engaged in the vital work of citizenship in the 21st century. Under Musk's chaotic reign, the platform has become increasingly unreliable for these purposes. Dissidents can no longer trust that their accounts won't be suspended at the whim of a billionaire who might have business interests in their country. Researchers can no longer rely on consistent access to data. The public can no longer distinguish between authentic grassroots movements and artificial campaigns amplified by those who've paid for prominence. The response from Musk's cult-like following has been as predictable as it is depressing. Every failure is explained away as genius-level strategy, every petty outburst defended as righteous anger, every obvious mistake reframed as intentional disruption. These are the same people who would applaud if Musk defecated on stage, convinced that they were witnessing a bold reimagining of performance art. The ability of human beings to delude themselves in service of their heroes would be fascinating if it weren't so dangerous. What we are witnessing is nothing less than the vandalization of one of the most important communication platforms of our time by a man whose understanding of free speech seems to have been gleaned from a fortune cookie, whose grasp of democracy appears limited to whatever serves his immediate interests, and whose vision for the future of human discourse amounts to turning everything into a giant Reddit thread moderated by 14-year-olds. The tragedy is not merely that Twitter has been destroyed, though destroyed it most certainly has been. The tragedy is that this destruction has been celebrated by those who mistake chaos for freedom, who confuse the absence of standards with the presence of liberty, and who have somehow convinced themselves that putting the public square in the hands of an erratic billionaire represents some kind of victory for democracy. These are the same people, one suspects, who would cheer the burning of libraries if the arsonist had enough followers and made sufficiently funny memes about it. As I write this, Twitter, now absurdly renamed X, in what must be the most expensive midlife crisis in human history, continues its descent into irrelevance and toxicity. Users flee in droves while bots and extremists fill the vacuum. What was once a flawed but functional platform for public discourse has become Musk's personal playground, where he and his minions can play at being revolutionaries while actually accomplishing nothing more than the degradation of our already fragile information ecosystem. The lesson here, if we're capable of learning it, is that our democratic institutions, and yes, in the 21st century, our major communication platforms must be understood as part of our democratic infrastructure, cannot be left to the whims of megalomaniacal billionaires who confuse their wealth with wisdom and their power with virtue. The public square, whether physical or digital, must belong to the public. When we allow it to become the private property of narcissists and demagogues, we shouldn't be surprised when it stops serving the public good and starts serving only the ego of its owner. Musk's Twitter adventure will eventually end, probably in bankruptcy or irrelevance, but the damage to our discourse will endure. We will be left with the wreckage of what was once a vital platform, the emboldening of every other tech billionaire who thinks they know better than everyone else, and the continued erosion of our ability to distinguish truth from fiction in the digital age. And somewhere, Musk will no doubt be tweeting, or Xing, or whatever stupid verb we're supposed to use now, about his next brilliant idea for fixing humanity, blissfully unaware that he has become one of its most pressing problems.